me ask you about a book that's not on your bio, but you and I both know that you had a hand in until the end when that hand was taken away from you, or your hand was taken off then.
Right.
You were actually asked by John Edwards to ghostwrite his book, Four Trials.
Yep.
And I know that it will come as a shock to people in this room to learn that John Edwards is an ass. But you discovered that both John and Elizabeth Edwards were wanting in the course of the work on this book. Does the predicament that the Edwardses now find themselves in these days, and the portrayal of the Edwardses, particularly in the come back to the Halpern book, which make Elizabeth Edwards sound out to be the worst person ever on earth?
Well, first of all,
any of this look to you different from what you encountered personally with them?
I have to issue the caveat that as of this morning, Elizabeth Edwards is my Facebook friend. So it's a so that's really true.
As of this morning, Carol Dawson is my Facebook friend. So you never know what you're going to wake up to.
That's really true.
Right, yeah.
But yeah,
I did.
But in any event, no, it's fair to say they're a problematic couple. I mean, is that the understatement of
nicely played, sir?
Yeah. I mean, not for nothing did John Edwards, during his very brief career as U.S. Senator, go through 4 chiefs of staff. They were fired one after the next by Elizabeth. She's a very, very difficult and very demanding lady, and can be very brusque with people. What I was overwhelmed with vis-a-vis John Edwards was his superficiality, and how he was a nice guy during the time that I spent with him.
So people are clear on the time period here. This would have been when to when?
Yeah, so I began work in November 2002 and carried on until, I'd say, about May of 2003. And spent a lot of time with the Edwardses during
the run-up to his first run for the presidency.
That's correct, yeah. And the conceit of this book, Four Trials, was that John Edwards, as a trial lawyer, of course, there was this, there are always criticisms about lawyers, and in particular personal injury attorneys, which he was one. And so the preemptive strike against that was that he would pick 4 cases that influenced him greatly, but the cases are largely told through the point of view of these proletarian clients that he had, who suffered some horrible thing, and Edwards comes to their defense and sues some insurance company or something like that, and sort of kind of hiding behind the clients in the way that as Elizabeth put it to me, that John Kennedy hid behind all the people in Profiles in Courage, and that was sort of their model. The problem with the idea, it was a clever one. But the problem with it was that Edwards did not have an investment at all emotionally in these 4 cases. Could remember nothing about them. And so when I would be interviewing him, I'd ask him a question about this particular case, and he'd say, I don't know the answer to that. I don't. Sorry. And so I never suffered great illusions about Edwards, but had I would have been disabused of those illusions pretty quickly. I mentioned, Evan, before that to me what was the most flabbergasting thing was throughout the 2008 campaign when Edwards would say that poverty was the cause of his life. And essentially what he's done is conflate poverty with his own background, which was that of the son of a mill worker. Now, his father was indeed a mill worker. He was the guy who wore the tie in the mills. I mean, he was a manager, and it wasn't a good existence. There was no way to get rich, and no one in his family had ever gone to college. And that's what Edwards wanted to escape the ignominy of being in that life. But he knew nothing about poverty. Never mentioned it at all during the time that I was with him, and later just floored people with his briefers, with his lack of understanding of that subject. So if I have any sort of Mark and John in their book Game Change, as you say, have a really, I think, devastating portrait of the Edwardses. But the one quarrel I have with that very excellent book, and Halpern's a good friend of mine, is that I wish they had also not just shown the tawdriness of the Riel Hunter affair and all that, but had shown as well how Edwards was not worthy of that moniker as the most substantive candidate we've got out there. He was not. Yeah, it's just stunning to me to hear this. It's a confirmation of your worst fears.